Chapter 18. Heading East. Sitting in the back of a military bus with a rifle, 250 rounds of ammunition, 2 grenades, and assorted other items of war that never in his wildest dreams would he have wanted around him, Jim felt safe. Looking down at himself, he no longer saw the surfer dude of months ago, the one who faked job searches to go surfing and wanted to be able to tell his mother, "I got the job, Mom, but you are not going to believe what I am doing." "Oh, what's the pay, you ask?" "Well, it is freedom." Jim laughed to himself, unable to believe just how sarcastic he sounded in his own thoughts. It had been days since the camp was freed by the soldiers of the American coalition, and for once, Jim was with somebody who listened to him about what had happened on the West Coast. Though they already knew the nation was under Chinese attack, they didn't know just how bad it was until now. Jim, like a great number of people who had been freed from FEMA Camp 1187 Region 7, jumped at the opportunity to do something rather than sit by waiting to learn Mandarin. Jim knew he was right where he was supposed to be, in a convoy approaching Shawnee Mission, Kansas, just outside of Kansas City. "Have you noticed how normal things seem around here?" Dawn asked, looking out the bus window at the people going about their business. All around were old buses and cars that looked as if they had come from classic car showrooms, museums, and junkyards. "Isn't it great?" Kevin asked, expressing his excitement at the thought of driving one of the classic cars. Jim was a little less impressed with the area, but he was very interested in their destination and the reason why they were heading east instead of west, where he knew the Chinese were coming from. "Did Sam happen to say why we were moving everyone east? Doesn't really look like they have a Chinese problem here." Being the one who had spoken to Sam the most, Dawn replied, "He said something about making contact with that rogue army unit from months ago." Instantly, Jim's interest was piqued as he thought back to the day it all started and the speech he had heard on the TV behind the bar at the beach. It was the first time he had seen a person shot that wasn't fake. Once again, he marveled at how much he had changed since that day. "He knows where they are?" Jim asked. Happy to pass along what she knew, Dawn began. "Yeah, remember the battle at Squire's farm? Well, Robert Squires is the reason his left arm doesn't quite work right and causes him great pain at times. He says Robert saved his life that day and that they worked together with the rogue unit until just hours before the EMP attack. Oh, and I guess they are known as the United Constitutional Militia now." Jim thought about what Dawn had just said, and one thought occurred to him. "Should you be telling people all this?" he asked, concerned about the information being sensitive. She just smiled and asked, "What? Are you going to tweet it out for the Chinese to find out?" Then she laughed at the same time, feeling a little depressed at the thought of not being able to tweet with her friends. Over the next hour, the conversations ranged from what they missed most, the last movies they had seen, the fast food they would love to eat again, and wrapping up with, "Are we there yet?" The last question was asked as the bus began to slow and chain-link fencing and razor wire came into view. The sight caused many on the bus to tighten their grips on their weapons and check their gear. Standing up in the middle aisle near the front, Sam called out, Jim, I'm going to need your help here." Jim began working his way out of the seat he shared with Dawn and walked to the front, wondering just what help he could be that the people he was now walking by couldn't provide. Almost as if he were reading his mind, Sam said again, "I need you to tell these men what you told me about out west." Jim thought back to how frustrated it made him when nobody would listen to him, and now how tired he was of telling the story. But that wasn't what he was going to tell Sam. "Sure, just let me know when to speak." Feeling the bus come to a complete stop, Sam nodded in response before turning to exit. "What is this place?" Jim asked now that he was able to get a much better view of the facility than from the bus. He could see many divisions in the road that led down into tunnels, a few covered with steel doors and the rest open with trucks moving in and out. Unable to hear Jim over the flow of traffic in and out of the facility, Sam continued walking over to what looked like a 6-seater golf cart. Looking back, he could see Jim was amazed by all the activity, and if asked, he would have to admit he was as well. Sam had looked forward to this meeting since connecting with General Harwood of the Kansas National Guard by shortwave radio. Now seeing the facility, he felt that the general was probably one of the most valuable contacts he could have hoped for in the area. Reaching out his hand as he approached the driver of the large golf cart, Sam introduced himself. "Hello, I am Sam Crawford, and this here is Jim. It looks like you are expecting us?" he asked, hoping that the man was here to escort him to the general. "You got it, buddy. Jump on in." Hearing the driver speak, he could tell there was no way the man was military, even though he was wearing a uniform and had a sidearm. Sam walked around to the front passenger side while directing Jim to take a seat anywhere he wanted. Settled in their seats and moving down the shoulder of the road leading into the far left tunnel, Sam found his curiosity taking control. "How long have you been in the service?" he asked the driver. Laughing at the question, he turned slightly in Sam's direction. 3 weeks. Never would have thought it possible. Then the power went. He stopped talking and shook his head side to side at the thought. Then with a deep breath, he began. "You know, things got bad. People killing each other for just a bottle of water, bodies piling up in the streets. It was all kinds of bad. Then this dude comes out and just starts giving the shit out for free. Next thing I know, I got the uniform on and I'm learning how to be a soldier. Now here we are." He finished with a slap to the steering wheel, laughing once again. The guy's story was one of the same happening in other areas of the country. With his years of service, he had seen contingency plans for cities without power, water, or other services. All of them stated that, after 48 hours, those cities would experience a 70% reduction in population, mostly due to death. From the look on his driver's face when he told his story, Sam could tell it must have been bad here before the general. Upon entering the tunnel, Sam and Jim felt they had underestimated just how important this contact was going to be. The inside of the facility was nothing like they could have imagined, with its large open areas, tall ceilings, rows of tractor-trailer trucks, and seemingly endless tunnels that went farther underground. Once inside, it was only a short ride to the general's office, which looked more like a control tower at an international airport. Bringing the cart to a stop in front of a plug-in station, the driver turned to Sam. "This is your stop. These boys will take you the rest of the way." Standing off to the side were 2 soldiers, and it was where they had been for some time by the way they wore their uniforms and stood. As soon as Sam had stepped out of the cart, and Jim had joined him, one of the guards said, "I am Sergeant Gill. If you would please follow me, the general is expecting you, Mr. Crawford." Jim felt a little strange still carrying his rifle with him in a government facility such as this, and nobody taking him down to the ground to confiscate it. Repeatedly, he checked to make sure it was on safe, making it hang down from his shoulder by the sling, and pointing to the ground with his hand touching it very little. He wasn't sure if it mattered to anyone around him, but it eased his newfound feelings for the weapon. After climbing a few flights of stairs and walking down a covered hallway cut from the bedrock, they entered the massive control center. Their eyes grew large as they looked at all the electronic equipment lighting up the room. It was a sight that neither thought they would behold again in their lifetime. "Good to see you made it, Mr. Crawford. Was it hard to find?" Harwood asked, like he had given him directions to his vacation house and not a top-secret government facility. Clearing his throat, he said, "Sir, please call me Sam and not at all. Your men found us about 50 miles out and guided us right here." "Well, Sam, how many soldiers do you have with you? I'm sure they could use some fresh food and water after their journey," Harwood asked as he signaled for one of his men. A man who likes to get to business. "I like that," Sam thought, and then replied, "Sir, I estimate 5,000 men and 200 horses if you have feed." "Absolutely, we have people harvesting grain now. We can get that right over. How about fuel?" As the general spoke, he also checked that the soldier he had called over was making a list for shipping. "Sir, we have plenty of that. It is everywhere since so few people can use it. But we could use ammunition," Sam replied. "Very well. Get this down to shipping, and I want the first truck sent ASAP." Harwood addressed the soldier taking notes. At this point, Sam had started feeling that things were a little too easy and had to ask, "Sir, what is the hook?" Confused by the question, Harwood replied, "Hook?" Sam explained, "Yes, this all seems too easy, and the supplies are the bait. Now I feel I am waiting for you to set the hook." Crossing his arms, Harwood thought for a moment. "Sam, I don't think it has ever been explained to me like that, but here it is. See that spider web of lights on the table?" He paused for Sam and Jim to get a better look before continuing. On the table was a map of the United States, and all across it were long rows of lights in yellow and white. In a few spots at junctions or major cities, they were red or green. "You see, the white lines represent the underground highway system that I control, and the yellow is what the government of the East still controls. Harwood was cut off by Sam. "You mean to tell me there is a highway system that spans the entire country?" Sam asked, having a difficult time comprehending the thought. Quickly, Harwood responded, "Yes, and that is why I need your personnel. They are mostly military men. As you can see, we have lost contact with several points, almost all being military bases. We were about to move in on the next link in the system, but my scouts reported a heavy military presence." "This is unbelievable," Sam thought as he watched the general point at the red light marking a terminal in Jefferson City, Missouri, when talking about a heavy military presence. "General, I believe the stars have aligned for us both. But first we have some information you need to hear about the West. Jim." As Jim stepped forward on Sam's cue and prepared himself to tell the story once again, Harwood raised his hand, signaling for him to wait. "Is this about the Chinese invasion?" Harwood asked to their surprise. Seeing that it was by the expression on Sam's and Jim's faces, Harwood continued, "We have a communication system that is isolated to underground, preventing it from being vulnerable to EMP. We are also aware they have taken all of St. Louis and that they began pushing west 3 days ago. Now, Mr. Crawford, I'm interested in hearing how the stars have aligned for us both, if you don't mind." Sam began telling him how he believed the Jefferson City terminal might have been taken by the rogue 138th Bravo Company Infantry Unit, and how the 3 who were on the government's top 10 most wanted list had taken the armory in Jefferson City before the EMP strike. Then he explained how he knew they were all framed by those in the government who wanted to create a civil war in the country in order to do away with the Constitution. "And sir, that is why they call themselves the United Constitutional Militia now,"